Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg.
I'm Joel.
And we are here today to do a Friday Reads video. I thought it would be fun to have Joel back, one, because everybody loves him, including me, but also because in my last Friday Reads video, I talked about how we were going to be acting as bouncers for a drag queen story hour at Montana Book Company on Saturday because of Helena Pride. They were doing a drag queen story hour. They have done it every year, but this year there were some threats against it and people saying that they were going to protest. So we had agreed that we would be there to support them and help prevent bad people from coming into the store. And you have a more interesting version of the story than me because I ended up in the actual story. We'll talk about it, and then we'll get to the actual Friday Reads portion of it. I did finish 3 books this week. I might save 2 of them for my larger discussion about 2 of them for my monthly wrap up. But one of those books we have in common.
Yes.
We both read it and we can have a lot of things to say about it. So we will talk about some books we read more toward the end. I will say really quickly, I did not manage to reply to any comments on the Friday Reads video from last week, but thank you for the concern and the support, everybody who offered support and for what we were planning to do. I really appreciate it. I'm also behind on my last video. I'm going to try to catch up. I might not catch up to the comments that have been already left, but I'm trying to stay on top of new ones that come in. So thank you for your patience. Let's talk about Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yeah, go for it.
So the reason my story is different from yours is that we watched the parade in Helena, and then afterward we were hanging out in Montana Book Company. 1, because we love it there, but 2, because we wanted to be there when the event started, and just in case anybody showed up early, if there was any trouble. So we were there before the event, and I happened to be standing at the bottom of the staircase. The event was on the 2nd floor. It's not, the 2nd floor is not actually theirs, but they were using the space. So I was talking to Abby. Chelsea, one of the owners, came down and was talking to Abby and said, I think we're ready to let people up, but I need one more person. And I was standing right there. So I volunteered as tribute. I went upstairs, and as they let people up, I ended up not being a bouncer so much as like a line manager or crowd control, because as people would come up, there was an aisle that they had created on the floor with tape, and they needed to keep that clear for fire safety reasons, and it was really crowded up there. So I had to make sure people didn't venture into that no man's land. And as people would come up the stairs, I would kind of just point them to where they could go. So that's what I did during the story hour. But it was nice because I actually got to see the story hour. You were outside.
Yeah, I missed story hour. I kind of wish I would have, but I felt my place outside with crowd control is a little bit more important.
They probably knew Joel is a lot tougher than me.
But we had probably about 100, 150, 175 people lined up behind us, and a bunch of the guys got forward, and we stood right on the yellow line dividing the traffic. And just stood right there like, you are not going to come on this side.
Yeah.
And we're didn't know what to expect.
No.
But basically about 10 people showed up.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting that they came in and they started, you could tell they were coming in on a religious factor. And so we just kind of stood our grounds, like, you are not going to come on this side of the street. You are not going to come in this building and interrupt story hour.
Yeah.
And they really were very low-key, stayed over there. But when story hour was over, the guy pulled out his megaphone and was going to start talking. And the second he got the megaphone up there and pushed the button, Charlie had an air horn and started blowing this air horn.
They were so excited to get that air horn for this exact purpose.
So excited.
Yeah.
So he would stop, they would stop, and then he'd bring up the megaphone again, and they would start pounding on the air horn. And he was getting so frustrated.
Yeah.
He wanted to get his word out, and they weren't letting him.
Yeah.
And which is perfect, because we did not want to hear that word.
No. And there's video of it on Instagram.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. Check out MT Book Co. on Instagram. If nothing else, they have a post that has the video, so you can check it out. It's worth it. The woman standing next to the guy with the megaphone was so frustrated as well. It was just funny. So I missed that part. And when you were saying as well that it's kind of a shame that they had shown up on a religious basis because, religion teaches love.
Right.
Right.
And what were the drag queens teaching?
Yes. So having been in the story hour and missed all of that stuff, what was really nice was that when the 3 drag queens who were participating went to the front, the one who was sort of leading the event was named Julie Yard. Love that. Julie Yard. And she stood in front of the kids and did a sort of introduction and said, okay, I want everybody to remember these 3 words: love, community, and acceptance, and had them repeat them and said, remember those words. And they read the first story, and then Julie Yard got up and said to the kids, can anybody tell me what the 3 words were? Somebody remembered. So she asked the kids, where in this story do you see an example of love? Where do you see somebody feeling accepted? And what made you feel a sense of community? And they repeated those questions in every book, or after every book that they read. And it was really cute. And they also had an ASL interpreter.
Which was very cool.
Very cool. The first year they've done that. The ASL interpreter was actually at the drag show as well, interpreting the lyrics of the songs. And she was a rock star.
She was really good. If you can get a good ASL interpreter doing something very dramatic and big and like a drag queen is, it's awesome.
She was on the same level. It was really good. So it turns out one of the drag queens who was participating in Story Hour is deaf. So she was really happy that there was an ASL interpreter there as well. And it was just about making the whole event, all of Pride, more accessible, because I know the interpreter, there were only 2 of them. They worked their butts off the whole week because they showed up to a lot of different events, and there were only 2 of them, and they just did a really great job. But so after the last drag queen, who was the deaf one, finished their story and they finished the discussion of the book, she taught all of the kids how to say the alphabet in ASL, which was a really cute touch.
Yeah.
And then when the event was over and they had taken pictures with all the kids, before they took pictures with the kids, they had questions, and I couldn't really hear any of the questions because kids talk very quiet and I was in the back. But after one little girl asked a question, everybody in the vicinity was like, "Oh, how cute." So Julie repeated the question for everybody, and it wasn't actually a question, it was a statement. So she just wanted everybody to know that she loves everyone and is happy to be here. And it's the cutest thing. It was just adorable. And then when they took pictures with everybody and everybody had cleared out the space, a car pulled up along the back door and they ran out the door, got in, and drove off like it was a bank robbery or something. But, it was a good event from that perspective. So you saw a lot more of the drama.
I saw no drama. There was more drama with the queens than with me. So I'm glad it did not have drama. And I'm glad it was peaceful. I will give the protesters credit. They were peaceful.
Yeah.
They tried to make a point, couldn't, and left.
Yeah. So. And it's nice that so many people showed up to create that same sense of community that they were talking about in the books, because that is one of the things I really love about Helena Pride. You really see a lot of people in their early 20s, teenagers and young children who are figuring stuff out for themselves and who are coming out and in the process of establishing a life for themselves and figuring out who they are and what that means for them. And it's just nice to see them in the process of doing that, but surrounded by a community of people who want to help them and support them while they're on that journey. I really love that.
Yeah. I saw a lot of young kids. The parents are open enough to let the kids figure out who they are and what they want. Maybe it'll go somewhere, maybe it won't. But at least the parents didn't say, "No, you're not this."
Yeah.
And just let them be kids.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful weekend.
And I'm always so afraid that events like this will go away because of that really supportive community atmosphere. And that's one reason we both felt so compelled to be there to support this story hour and support Pride. I'm glad so many other people did as well.
Huge turnout. So I thank everybody who came out.
Yeah, agreed. The only other thing that's really gone on this week is we watched The Bear on Hulu. It's a TV show. We had seen ads for it and had no idea what it was about. And then we started hearing stuff about it, and it sounded like something that would be interesting to us. It's a really interesting show because you don't quite know what it is. A lot of TV shows now really want to have a hook, and they want to have sort of cliffhangers that will keep pulling you through. And this doesn't really have that. It doesn't really reveal what it is or what it's doing until further along, almost to the end. A lot of stuff is kind of revealed in the last episode of the season.
Yeah. So it's basically a man's brother commits suicide and leaves him his restaurant. The restaurant's failing. He borrowed money from mobbish kind of people.
Yeah.
And the characters are really good.
The acting is fantastic.
I love them all.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was told about it was it's like a real restaurant, what a real restaurant is like. And it actually is. You have a lot of different personalities and conflicts, but you do have to come together as a cohesive team to work together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this season 1 brings together.
Yeah.
And
so he is a Michelin star chef who now, like, his brother's restaurant is kind of like a sandwich shop / deli / diner.
Yeah.
We couldn't quite figure out because the food he's making seems pretty elevated for like diner lunch sandwich crowd. But it looked good. It was a really interesting show, and it almost feels like a prequel to a different kind of show.
And I'm thinking that's what season 2 is going to be, a very different kind of show.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with season 2, but we're looking forward to that. So that's the only other thing.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Stick with it because it reveals a lot as it goes on. And then we can get into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. So I think I'm probably going to hold off on most of my books or really talking about most of the books that I read this week until a monthly wrap up, which I'll probably do next week. And you are free to join if you would like. Just putting that out there. So I finished 3 books this week. I picked up a book while we were in Montana Book Company because somebody sent us there with a mission. They are a legal advocate for kids who are either in the foster system or going through things that could potentially land them in the foster system. So one of the people she's working with is a 13-year-old girl who thinks she might be a lesbian. Her parents are really not being supportive. So she asked us to try to find books that would help her, that might be a little bit affirming. We went and Abby was not there. We knew Abby was going to be the person who could really help us, and she was not there the day that on Friday when we were there browsing. But we found some really good things. And then on Saturday, we told Abby what we were looking for. It was the funniest thing because she said, all right, well, let me think about it. And she went in the back to get ready. Not even 30 seconds later?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, she's yelling, I had an idea. And we didn't think she was talking to us. We thought she was talking to somebody about something like Pride or Storytime related.
Because Storytime was happening that afternoon.
Yeah. But she was talking to us. She knew the perfect book, and it was Joe, an adaptation of Little Women, sort of, by Kathleen Gros. And it is like a perfect book because in this adaptation, which is set in the modern world, Joe starts to think she might be a lesbian as the book goes on, but it's subtle enough that if the parents are not really approving, they're not really going to know that part is in there. They might just assume that it's a graphic novel modernization of Little Women. So she really did know the perfect book. When we got home on Sunday, I read it because I knew I would read it really quickly. So what did it, an hour?
Hour, 2, yeah.
It's a 13-year-old level graphic novel, so it's not like an achievement. But it was a really cute book. I will say, if you're looking for it because of the Little Women aspect, it touches on a lot of the parts of Little Women that people love, but it doesn't really go in hard. You'll get nods to some of the moments that you really like, but you won't get like a shot-for-shot adaptation. But it's a really cute book, and it was perfect for that. That's all I'll say about that one. The other book I finished much later in the week, Elena Knows by Claudia Piñeiro. I had put this down at the advice of other people because it was really heavy, and you were right. I didn't even realize how much this was kind of impacting the headspace I was in at the time. But when I put it down and revisited it, I was in a much better headspace. I'll talk more in my monthly wrap-up because I have a lot to say about it. This is a bleak book. It's like a bruise. It's a lot, but I'm really glad that I finished it, and I have a lot to say about it when I do my monthly wrap-up. Then the only other book left for me that I finished is the one we have in common. Were there any other books you finished this week that you want to shout out?
I did finish Overground Railroad.
Yes, I love this book.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
Candace Taylor did a really good job explaining what it was like to be black in early times, 50s.
I think
60s.
the first issue of the Green Book was like the 1930s, and then really picked up around the 40s, 50s, because after World War II, people had more disposable income to travel, but if you were black, there were very limited options for traveling.
Yeah. And she actually retraced a lot of the things in here, which was a beautiful book.
Yes.
I did the audio, which was good, but I did kind of follow through and look at some of the pictures and what was going on in the book, which is a beautiful book.
Yeah. It's like fate. He opened to the page that talked about Dookie Chase, which is a place we really want to
We
eat.
really want to go to Dookie Chase. And she explains a lot about what some of these places were. And Dookie Chase was one of the first places where they had a black female chef.
Yes.
And in New Orleans.
And integrated dining.
Yes.
Yeah, which she had to fight for.
Yes.
Yeah.
So talked about segregation, integrated, and just kind of how important it was for people to have a tour guide to be black in America, which was sad you had to have that, but beautiful book, very good.
And she does a very good job connecting it to present struggles. Like, she's very much letting you know, like, a lot of these things, the format of the racism has changed, but it hasn't gone away. And I think she does that in a really clever way. I love this book. I also listened to it on audio, but I knew there was a lot of extra supplemental material in the book, so I wanted to have that. Yeah. And we found it on our bookstore tour.
Exactly. And a narrator can actually make or break a book for me. And the narrator was very, very good. I loved her. She had a lot of enthusiasm about the book, but also when it came down to a downtime, she knew how to bring that into it. So audio's good, but I'd recommend the book just for the pictures and everything else that's in it.
And she also did a tour where she went around trying to find businesses that had been in the Green Book that were still open, and there are photographs of some of them in there as well. So yeah, essential supplemental material is in here if you do the audio, I would say. Any others?
My next book that I finished, I'm sorry, I'm still needing a little happiness.
It's okay.
So Annabeth Albert is one of my favorite male-on-male romance novelists. So I'm reading a couple of her offbeat ones. And so I did A Very Marian Christmas, which is about the Marian family. It was good. I really liked it. It was just kind of, and it's Christmas time. So
that's our thing.
You know, if I can have Christmas in July, I'm happy.
Yeah, for sure. And LGBTQ plus holiday romance, you really don't have to say much more. And we're in.
And then I did another quick one because I just had something to do and I needed some audio. So it's called Cocky. Not very good. So
there have to be some duds.
But I did get in, and Greg shared with me, Kiss Her Once For Me by
Alison
Cochrun.
Yeah.
Who did
the Charm Offensive.
Yes. And I loved the Charm Offensive. It was really good. And then this one was about two females falling in love. One was a pastry chef, and one was into
animation.
But she's really falling apart in a hot mess.
A little bit, yeah.
It comes together in the end, and beautiful book.
It is really sweet. And Abby from Montana Book Company, who I mentioned earlier with Joe, had recommended The Charm Offensive last year, and then we really loved it. So, again, thank you, Abby. Yeah. And this one of the things I like about Alison Cochrun is, like, the premise of The Charm Offensive should not work. And it does, because she's a really fun writer. She really creates great characters. She subverts some romance tropes. So the premise feels familiar because it's using all of the storylines and plot points that have been used before, but she's doing it in really interesting ways. And she accounts for things that would be plot holes for other writers in interesting ways that kind of make sense. And the same thing happens in Kiss Her Once For Me. I think she does a really great job giving you the comfort of familiarity without boring you by making it seem like something you've already read 1,000 times before. Yeah.
It takes place at Christmas
for
over 2 years. And so, of course, we have our Christmas again.
Yeah.
And she really pulled the whole storyline together.
Yeah.
It can be a little bleak in a few areas. Poor girl is just a mess and just trying to find her way in life.
Now, to be fair, both of them are to a certain extent. So the premise is Christmas Eve 2021. Ellie has just recently moved to Portland for her dream job in animation, and she is having a bad day because her mother, who's this total flake, awful woman, but in an interesting way, has just bailed on her. She was supposed to come for Christmas and she didn't get on the plane. So Ellie feels very alone. And she goes to Powell's and she's like literally crying in an aisle. That's how much of a mess she is. And she reaches for a book at the same time as this woman. They end up talking, they get coffee, and they end up spending the entire day together. And it's a magical like snow day scenario. And it's like this perfect day. Ellie identifies as demisexual. Is that what it is? Where you really have to have an emotional bond with someone in order to feel attraction. But they have such great conversation over the course of the day that she develops that attraction. And they end up spending the night together. But something happens in the morning and they end up separating. Now, a year later, it's heading into the holidays of 2022. Ellie is even more of a mess because she lost her dream job. She's about to lose her apartment. She's completely lost her sense of self-worth. And this is where the classic romantic novel trope comes in. She is so desperate for money that she agrees to pretend to be engaged to the landlord of the coffee shop where she works, because in classic romance novel tropes, he needs to be married in order to claim $2 million of inheritance, because his grandfather was this waste of a person who really wanted to dictate how he would live his life. So she agrees to do it. They're going to fake marriage for a year, and as part of that, she gets to join his family for the holidays in order to really sell this idea that they have met and are engaged and about to get married. So she shows up for Christmas, and his sister is the woman she had a one-night stand with and who she's been pining for all year, and chaos ensues.
Total chaos.
It's really cute. And it keeps complicating it a little more, but in interesting ways that don't just feel like you're contorting the plot in interesting ways.
Yeah.
And it feels like everybody behaves in a really believable way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really like, there's two grandmothers in this, and you really like the grandmothers.
I liked Mima.
Yeah. So the character development is really good, and keeps it very interesting and just keeps it going.
Yeah. It was total, I call it cinnamon bun action. I realize there is an actual term in the romance world for cinnamon bun or cinnamon roll, where there's a really strong, tough character who's actually soft on the inside. I think that's what it means. So I'm using the term wrong, but it's kind of right, because Jack is a bit of a cinnamon roll.
Yeah.
Jack is the baker who Ellie meets.
Jacqueline, female.
Yeah.
And tough girl on the outside,
Very
mushy on the
vulnerable,
inside.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is something that really gets revealed along. She seems like somebody who's tough, who doesn't feel bothered by everything, but she's actually very emotional and fragile inside.
Yeah.
And that's really sweet and cute.
The book is an ARC. We did get an early release on NetGalley.
Yeah.
So it's not available yet. It'll be available in September.
November 1st.
November 1st.
November 1st.
Do look for it. It'll be a fun read during the holidays. So.
It really would. We needed it now for various reasons, and we're big fans of Christmas in July, just in general. It's our vibe. Some people get turned off by that, but we don't care. So, yeah, I would say this is definitely a good one. If anything we've said about this book interests you, pre-order it at your favorite local independent bookstore. If you don't have a favorite local independent bookstore, I'll put a link to the book on bookshop.org, because that's a really great site, better than Amazon, and it supports local bookstores. So my bookshop.org account is attached to Montana Book Company. So if I purchase something from them, Montana Book Company directly gets a cut of whatever I purchase from them. If you don't have an independent bookstore selected, it just goes into a pool that goes out to all affiliated independent bookstores. And I know for a fact, 'cause we heard from a bunch of people when we did our bookstore tour last year, and from talking to bookstores since then, that a lot of them said that the money they got from bookshop.org supplemented the business that they lost because of the pandemic, and it really meant a lot to them. So really great site.
Good cause too.
Yeah, for sure. And a really great book. I would recommend it. I was very enthusiastic about it. I wrote a review on my blog. I did an Instagram post where I shared it to a story and tagged Alison Cochrun, and she sent me a "aw, thank you," and that was it. But it was like nice that she saw it. So just a really cute book. I would totally recommend it. It did everything we needed it to do.
Absolutely.
In terms of what is currently being read, I started the audio of Less by Andrew Sean Greer, because I had forgotten that I put a hold on it on Libby. and it became available. There's a sequel coming out later this year. I want to say September, and I have access to that on NetGalley as well, but I want to reread Les first. So I put The Candy House a little further to the side, and I am almost done with Les. I have started working on a Pulitzer Prize deep dive for it. I need to do a little more work, and actually I was going to tell you, I would like to stop by the used bookstore this weekend and see if they have a copy of it, because I'm listening to it on audio, and there are some things that I want to be able to refer back to when I do the deep dive, so I want to see if they have a copy.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I've been doing that. I'm almost done. I should be done by the end of July, so I'll probably talk about it a little bit in my wrap up for July as well. I also just started. I'm only 1 or 2 chapters into Mercury Pictures Presents by Anthony Marra, which is actually going to be releasing on Tuesday. And it's good so far, but I'm only 2 chapters in, so I don't really have much of anything to say. It's just this week I've been focusing on the audio more than the book. So what have you been up to?
As you all know, I'm a chef, and I have always known about James Beard and kind of great guy. So I'm reading The Man Who Ate Too Much by John Birdsall, and it's the story of James Beard and how he became such a strong person in the cookbook world.
Yeah. Winning a James Beard Award is like winning a Pulitzer.
Yeah, it's big. It's very interesting. It's not what I expected, and his life is not what I expected, and I'm glad I'm getting into it, because I'm about halfway. I don't know how he gets to be the big person he is, but he died at 85, and I'm basically at his age now of 50. So in the next 35 years, he does something big. Wow. So it's a good read.
That's probably about the era where television and media really kicked up around. Yeah. He showed up as a character in at least one episode of Julia, the TV show about Julia Child on HBO Max. Well, I think it was on HBO, but we watched it on HBO Max. Yeah. And that is actually what really spurred the interest in him. I have the book saved on Scribd as well. And I imagine there's something that happens in there. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It is interesting when people turn out to be complex in ways that you didn't expect.
Very complex, interesting life. His mother, of course, like all men, his mother was the person who got him into food. So
it's true.
Yeah.
That is something that's really interesting. We were at a book signing for, I think it was Gail Simmons from Top Chef, and she and Tom Colicchio were in conversation at the release of her book, and both of them said it's really interesting how the culinary world is so male dominated, because if you ask any male chef, 9 out of 10 of them are going to say that they got their inspiration for cooking from either their mother or their grandmother. So, yeah, exactly. It's one of those things about the culinary world that fascinates me. So.
Well, one thing, because it is more male dominated, we have spent, when we travel, we will always look for more of a female dominated chef. And I think one of the best restaurants we ever ate in, and probably the best, was Michelle Bernstein's Michi in Miami.
Which doesn't exist anymore, but it's such a good restaurant. She has a different restaurant now, right?
Yeah. But she really had to come up the ranks and prove herself. And yet, eating her restaurant, she's proved herself.
Amazing meal.
It was the most amazing meal we had. That's where I proposed. So.
Yes, it is. Yeah. We went. The meal was so good we went back.
Yeah, we went. I went back a couple of times. So
yeah, but absolutely, it was lovely.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably everything.
That's all I have.
Friday Reads. It is really hot where we are. Hopefully, I don't know how hot it is in the rest of the world. I know it was really bad in Europe. Hopefully, things have cooled down a little bit. It's going to be over 100 degrees today, Saturday, and Sunday. So we're probably going to be lying low and making sure Jamie doesn't overheat. She's asleep on the floor behind us. She's pretty good. She regulates really well. But
I know a lot of people have asked about Jamie, and Jamie's doing really well.
She is.
While we were in Helena, we sent her to her boarding.
Yeah.
And when we came there on Sunday, she was playing with other dogs. She had a little boyfriend, and I think she's kind of coming out.
Yeah.
Of everything.
I think
so. She's doing really well.
So one thing you have to understand about Jamie, you hear her barking a lot, especially in the blooper videos. She came from a farm in California. She came from an environment where she had to fight for like resources and attention and things like that. So it was a huge adjustment getting her in a house with Guinness and not thinking that she had to fight him for resources and attention. And she did over time adjust and really start thinking, okay, if you're giving something to Guinness, I trust that you're going to give something to me too. It was a journey, but we got there. And she doesn't trust other people very well, which is part of why she's always barking out there. So one thing that's really great about what Joel said about Happy Paws is we don't see her play. We don't see her get comfortable around other people very much. So it really means a lot to us to see her in an environment where she feels comfortable, where they understand her well enough to test her personality with some other dogs and find ones that she'll be comfortable hanging out with. We love it.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
It was.
Yeah. And she's going to start barking in a second. So let's go. We're going to go keep her cool. Hope you stay cool where you are. And I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.
Thank you.